Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 79.
Congratulations, you showed up. Give yourself a high five in celebration of your success. Welcome to the Cashflow Diary, where new and experienced investors come to take confident action towards their goals. Your host is a family man, a real estate entrepreneur, investor, coach, and instructor. As a master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow 101 game, he's inspired many to begin their journey into creating cash flow for themselves and their family. And now, here he is to offer you the tools required to earn the income desired. Your cash flow coach, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am your host, Jay. I'm so glad that you made it today because, I think you're going to learn a lot because many of us may not realize just how much thinking we do, and more importantly, how much non-thinking we could say that we do. And when it comes to actually taking action towards the goals that we want, we could be self-sabotaging. We could actually have habits, thought patterns that are actually keeping us from moving forward. And I think you're going to learn a lot about yourself today, and more importantly, how to put yourself on track so that you can begin to create the cash flow that you're looking for. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I want to make sure that you know that you can go straight over to learninvestingnow.com for an absolutely complimentary course that will begin to help you build your cash flow. You can totally do that exactly right now. Now, today's guest, man, when you talk about qualified, that's an understatement. If anything, the only challenge that we will have today is being able to make sure that you understand how much value he has to be able to bring to the table in the short time that you and I have together with him. So today's guest, Dr. Jeffrey Fannin, holds a PhD in psychology and an MBA and Bachelor's of Science degree in mass communications. He's the founder and executive director for the Center of Cognitive Enhancement and Thought Genius, LLC. Now, right now, you're probably wondering, okay, Jay, how does this manage to help me with my cash flow? Well, understand this. He's worked in the field of neuroscience, researching and training the brain for over 15 years. The thought that occurs to me when I think about someone who knows how to train the brain is, what if my brain was trained incorrectly? What if there's something I am not aware of that's going on that could be sabotaging me towards the goals that I want to achieve? He's had extensive experience in training the brain for optimal brain performance, working with people who have had head trauma, stroke, chronic pain, attention deficit disorder, anxiety disorders, depression, and trauma recovery. And you're probably now saying to yourself, but Jay, I don't have any of those things. Here's the thing that I do know. Right now, you are looking for things to perform better. And his research and experience also extends into high performance training such as personal achievement, performance brain mapping for sports, enhancing leadership skills through brainwave entrainment, improving brain function, and to enhance mental and emotional dexterity. I personally like the idea of the mental and emotional dexterity and personal transformation. So welcome, if you will, Dr. Jeffrey Fannin. Jeffrey?
Jay, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I hope I can live up to that.
It sounds like you already have in so many ways.
Yeah, I've managed to do quite a lot in the time that I've been around here. So, and people ask me all the time, how has you been able to do so much? And I didn't know I couldn't do it. So,
right.
There's just a lot of things. Before I was an airline pilot, before I got into this, and flying for U.S. Air and being able to work out of LAX in Los Angeles. And, then they started having layoffs, and my seniority number went from the middle of the stack to the bottom of the stack. And then another layoff kicked me out of the system. And that's really when a lot of things changed for me, because I knew it'd be 2 or 3 years before I got into, my number came back up again to get back in the system. And given my age at that time, it was like, well, I'm probably never going to get the good routes, and I'm never going to get the good aircraft. I'm always going to kind of be on the bubble. That's what we would in the airline business call that. And human performance was something that had always been very interesting to me. And so as I, pondered what will I do next in the next chapter of my life, took a bunch of tests and things like that, and finally decided that human performance was something that I was always interested in. The guys that I would fly with, they said, when I fly with you, it's like going to a Tony Robbins seminar in the cockpit, because I was always interested in that stuff. Why do we do what we do?
Right.
And why can two people in the same family, one go one direction, one go a different direction? And so that was always fascinating to me. So when I decided to go back to school and get my PhD in psychology, I started studying the brain. And boy, that really flipped my switch. The more I learned, the more I know, or that I found out that I didn't know. And so that was fascinating to me, because it was like this never-ending story that just kept going and going and going. And so it became very intriguing to me. And after I got my PhD, started doing some counseling work, and the kinds of things that most people do once they're fresh out of school. And it didn't take long for me to realize that there were a lot of people who really didn't know how to change. So we would discuss their stories and all the details and stuff, and you say, well, you should think about it differently, and on and on and on. And at the end of the day, weeks and weeks later, they were still in the same spot. And I wondered about that. It's like, what is it that causes people to do that or to not do that? And by understanding the brain mapping, I got acquainted with, started doing some work with professional golfers, and ran into a guy that was doing this stuff called neurofeedback. And he explained it to me, and I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. And so we teamed up, put a practice together, started doing, some work with that. And then brain mapping came into my life, and I started, going to all the different seminars and getting certified in this and that and the other thing, and learning more about the patterns of the brain. And so that really created an interest for me. And so over the last 15 years, I've done literally thousands and thousands and thousands of brain maps on people, to be able to see the patterns, to see what happens. And, along that path, you get an opportunity to, I'm really passionate about audiobooks. And so listen to audiobooks a lot, when I'm out walking, when I'm working around the yard, or, stuff like that. And so I gather a lot of information over the years. And, I don't listen to novels and things like that. It's science that kind of flips my switch. And I remember one time I was working out in the yard, and my wife came out, and of course I had the iPod glued to my hip, and earbuds in, and just working away. And she says, "What are you listening to?" And I kind of looked up and I said, "Einstein, E = mc squared." Her eyes just rolled back in her head. Like, whatever.
Yeah, you're like that's you call that entertainment? That's for fun.
That's what I like.
I hate somebody needs to. We're all glad that it's you, because I'm sure there are a number of people listening right now going, yeah, I wouldn't have chosen that. But here's the thing that I like about some of the things that you've said thus far, is because you did something I find intriguing. Many people go, airline pilot, right? All right, cool. I did that, and they stick to it, and they don't develop the ability to then switch. So you said, no, airline pilot, I'm done with that. Let me go back to school, get a PhD. By the way, I've got a PhD too. It's called a public high school diploma, but yours happens to be a little bit more valuable. So, and that, so I'm just like, wow, okay. So you let go of what some people would have clung to. You managed to release that and move over to the next thing. But you said something that I think, two things specifically that I think are very, very interesting that I'd like to dig into. One, you said most people don't know how to change. And then two, you've been able to see patterns. I'm interested to know, what is it that you think prevents people from changing? And more importantly than that, what can we do to be able to change? Because many of us right now are experiencing the change. They're listening, we're changing probably the way we earn income, the way we think about business, the way we think about life, the framework, everything that's happening around us and to us and that we want is on the other side of some sort of major change. So what's the secret?
Well, I spent quite a bit of time working with people who invest in the stock market, stock traders, and looking at what helps them and what prevents them from being successful. There are three things that I've now come to understand that are the keys to that success. One is there is what we call brain health. The second is what we call brain fitness. And the third is our thoughts. So, that being said, when we look at brain health, these are elements that we have dealt with in the clinic. As you mentioned earlier, anxiety, depression, those ADD, those kinds of things where the brain is not processing as efficiently as it should. So we look first at brain health. What is happening in the patterns? Because things like anxiety, depression, and ADD all have particular signatures in the brain map as we look at it. And when we create a brain map, we start with a regular electroencephalogram and run that through another program that turns it into a quantitative EEG. So then we see all these little color pictures, and that's where we were able to look at the patterns. So we want to look at brain health first, because if you have anxiety, it's going to be very difficult. And I've got a lot of representations and things that I'm going to show at the event on are you wired for wealth? Because those are some of the things that will stop people, from making good decisions, or the anxiety, or what we call hypercoherence, and understanding the brain health side of things. The brain fitness side of things is, how good is your memory? Can you sleep well? Is there balance and wellness going on with you? And in some of the research and work that we've done over the last couple of years, over 700 brain maps on advanced meditators and so forth, that we are able to look at how transformation actually comes about. And the third thing is really involves the book that I'm finishing up. I only have 2 more chapters, and my editor is all over me about getting them done.
They always are.
The title of the book, and Jake, maybe you can relate to this, and the title is Help, My Thoughts Are Holding Me Hostage.
Right.
Yeah, because what happens in our thinking pattern, a lot of people are not fully aware that their thoughts are what create these conditions in terms of brain health and brain fitness, as well as creating our own reality. Let me give you a little bit of quantum physics here, and I promise not to get too deep. I say
just keep it to 3-syllable words and less, and I think we'll be okay.
I'll try. So there's a law in physics that is called the law of attraction, and if I have it says that energy that is vibrating, and all thoughts are energy and information. And so if I have a thought, then I hold that thought for 17 seconds. Now, whether it's a wanted thought or an unwanted thought, it doesn't matter. The same principle applies here. So if I have that thought of I want more money, and I'm holding on to that thought for 17 seconds, well, another thought like that will be entered in 17 seconds. And now we're starting to gather the energy, so it is what we call a constructive interference pattern, and allows that to grow. The momentum is starting to happen. So you do that for 17 seconds, 17 seconds, 17 seconds, all the way up to 68 seconds. Once you pass the 68-second mark, then this wave energy begins to have an effect on matter. And so we begin this momentum of what we think about then actually comes into our life. Let me give you a real quick example here. Let's suppose I'm driving down the highway. Somebody cuts me off. And, before I'm vibrating this energy about, being content and happy and so forth. But now I'm vibrating angry energy because this guy cut me off. I go back to the office. I tell everybody about this guy that, cut me off, what a knucklehead he is. And, go home and tell my wife. And she says, yeah, I'm fixing dinner. I need 3 things from the store. Could you go get them? Sure, I'll do it. So I go to the store. I'm still thinking about this guy, building up more and more momentum, right?
Right.
I get to the store, and all of a sudden, I get the 3 items, go up to the register, and there's a guy in front of me that has 38 items in the express lane. Coincidence? I don't think so. something for me to be angry about. Not only that, but the guy that's running the cash register, it's his first day and he's not doing so well, and I'm getting frustrated because, you know, and so that pattern goes on and on and on. And there is a way to break that pattern that I discuss in my book and when I'm teaching. And I'm going to show people actually how you can break these kind of patterns if they come to the event. We're going to be actually doing some brain maps while we're there as well. So people might be able to engage us for that process if they choose to do so. But the important thing is to look at all three of those elements: brain health, brain fitness, and how your thoughts moment to moment are affecting you, because there is real science and real physics that are involved in all of that.
Wow. Now, for those of you wondering, he kept referring to the event. It's the event we've been talking about. It's the Money Squared event that's coming up. Dr. Jeffrey Fannin will be there as well as myself. And we'll be doing our best to make sure that you are mentally fit, as well as you understand the techniques for real estate and a whole host of other different ways to make sure that you are focused on being able to increase your income at the event, not only mentally, but spiritually, physically. We're going to cover it all. So for those of you wondering, that's what he's talking about. Now, I have a question, because you said something that was intriguing to me and possibly could be a bit of hope for some of us. You specifically said that you hold the thought for 17 seconds, and within that 17 seconds, another thought would emerge similar to it. And then at the 68-second mark, then it would begin to have an effect on matter. So my question becomes, okay, so that means if I happen to catch myself having a less than pleasant thought, but I haven't held it, and more importantly, if I've let it go before 68 seconds, you're saying it has no or little or less effect?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's a little bit like, let's suppose that you're in San Francisco and your car is sitting on top of a hill there, and you release the brake because you want to see what's going to happen. If your car starts to roll and you go, oh, I can see what's going to happen here, so you get in front of it and put your hands out, stop the car. That little bit of momentum is not difficult to change the direction of the event. But if you go to the bottom of the hill and your car starts coming down, all of that momentum is going to be very difficult to stop. In fact, all you can do is wait for that to get over and start and change the momentum. So it's about managing your thoughts and emotions in all of this, and being able to determine what's there. Now, a key factor in some of this stuff is our core beliefs. A lot of people understand about core beliefs and how our core beliefs will dictate what our behavior is. But how does a belief actually happen? Well, it's a thought that you have over and over and over again, and that's what makes up our core belief system. So if you want to know what's on your subconscious core belief, just look at your behavior. If you're getting what you want, then great. But if you're not, then there's something there. And the reason I bring this up is, let's suppose that somebody is trying to change those thoughts. So consciously, they're going, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money. But subconsciously, they have a belief that says, you don't deserve more money. And they're not even aware that that's what's happening. Because think about this, from neuroscience, we understand that our cortex, our thinking part of our brain, processes at 40 bits per second. The subconscious part of our brain processes at 40 million bits per second. Wow. And so many of those things that happen in our subconscious, we're not even aware of. One of the things that I'm going to show people at the Money Squared event is how information from our brain gets out into what some call the ether, but I call the collective unconscious. And then how does that information interact with us? And information comes in, and how we're able to attract that which we desire. But if you have a conflict in that, we live in a universe that is an all-inclusive universe. It's going to give us what we ask for. So if what we're thinking in our conscious part of our brain is, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money, but what we're broadcasting to the universe is, I don't deserve more money, guess what you're going to get?
Frustration?
Lack. you know?
Got it. Got it.
So
Wow.
it's, it gets back to that thinking process. If you want to change your thinking, help, my thoughts are holding me hostage. That's one way that it happens.
Okay. So then here comes the question, because I know maybe unconsciously these are things that, either myself or others have gone through, or maybe even someone listening. So we're living and relating to the world for a set number of years one way before we run into someone like yourself who begins to educate us and show us that there's another way, or a better yet, a way that we can actually influence and control a little bit more. What happens to all that momentum? I today I'm listening to you going, okay, this makes sense. What do I do? How do I stop what was, the thoughts even before this particular episode, all the way to the future? What's the magic secret to making that transition, and how quickly can someone see results?
Well, people can see results very, very quickly. And here's the key, Jay. You have an indicator within yourself that lets you know whether you're on track or not. It's called emotions. Emotions are nothing more than vibrations that go on uh, in within us all the time. And so the vibrations for despair and for anger and frustration are slower, denser frequencies than those for joy, love, and happiness. And so we all have a set point, and you alluded to this just a few moments ago. Have you ever known somebody who's a worrier? And somebody say, "Do you know so and so?" The first thing that comes to mind, yeah, they worry a lot. And so what the reason for that is they have a set point that they are thinking about those things that cause worry. Now, let me kind of hold that part of the story for just a second. Let's suppose that when I was being conceived, that my mother was anxious and fearful. So we know that this element of what we call epigenetics, or the signals above the genes, that the cells in my body are vibrating at a particular rate. There's huge amounts of information. Dr. Bruce Lipton has written a really great book uh, uh, called The Biology of Belief, and where you understand the biology of how those things happen. But so that means that when I'm growing up, maybe my vibrations, are going to be that way. So that question has always been around. Is it nature or is it nurture? And I can tell you quite succinctly in science that the answer to those questions is yes. So,
Awesome.
so it can be either nature or nurture. So, like you were talking about, if I grew up with all of that, maybe I grew up in a very difficult circumstance. Well, history is replete with a lot of examples of how people were able to change during that time. And so we have the ability to change, and it's by changing our thinking. And if we give credence to our emotions, if I have what I would call negative emotions, then that's kind of my higher self saying, you can wallow in that if you want, but I'm not going there. And so it's a matter of looking at those things, what's working for you and what's not working for you. If you're getting the result that you're looking for, then you probably have the right core beliefs in your system. But if you're not, then there's probably something that needs adjustment there. So the question then becomes: is it brain health? Is it brain fitness? Or are we talking about your thinking patterns? All of those can be adjusted.
You know, the cool thing about the fact that you're human, you and I, human, is that we have the capacity to change. We have the capacity to be flexible and do something different. A frog, a bird, has no ability to change. It can only respond to instinct. So now, as you are listening to this particular episode, you might be having some thought patterns, and wondering what are some of those thought patterns that you could do to change. Interestingly enough, this is definitely something we cover inside our Cashflow Foundation series of videos. And for many of you who've already taken advantage either of our wholesale program or something, from us, you probably already have, access to those videos. One thing that I want to remind everybody, still working on the audiobook. We will get back to the questions and all the other things. And then you're going to start to have more episodes where it's just me and you. And we're going to hang out for a little bit, which I think some of you would like. And yeah, we'll do that. But in the meantime, still working on that audiobook. Wanted to make sure if you still wanted to be on the list to know when the audiobook is going to be released, you send a text message to 949-682-3565. The code is audio, AUDIO. For those of you who are international, you just go to cashflowdiary.com/audio and fill out the form, name and email address, and we'll let you know when it becomes available. I can tell you this, though, I'm excited about something, is that we recently completed our Raising Private Capital Mastermind group in a live format. That's right. So we will soon be able to make those recordings available. But for those that want to know about that early, you're going to send a text message to with the keyword money, MONEY, to the same number, 949-682-3565. So all of you, I know you're on a mobile device, 949-682-3565, or you can just go to cashflowdiary.com/money to put yourself on the list so that you'll know when the course will be available. It was amazing to go through it. Had a couple of people, well, more than a couple, but a number of people be able to raise capital. One guy in particular was able to raise, you hear this, $1 million from the information. Very exciting to know that you can make a difference in the world by sharing what it is that you do know. We will be sharing that with you, so make sure that you send your information over to the code so that way you have the ability to be on the list and learn how to get that done for yourself and your deals. Again, 949-682-3565. The keyword is money, or cashflowdiary.com/money. So let me get you back to the doctor, because I know you're learning a lot from the individuals that are going to be at the Money Squared event, and I'm looking forward to meeting many of you. For those of you that are going to be in San Diego, can't wait to see you there. Bring your questions for sure. We'll do our best. We will be talking about, I will be talking about anyway, more, skills, tips, techniques on raising private capital. But I'm looking forward to learning from all the other people there, Sharon Lecter and John Assaraf and more and more and more. Anyway, enough of me. Let's get back to the interview. Okay. And that's exactly what I'm sitting here thinking how you could assist someone in making those shifts. So you mentioned with brain health, specifically, you said the brain was somehow not processing efficiently, which suggests that there's a way to get a tune-up. What's that look like?
Yeah, we use a process called neurofeedback. Neurofeedback's been around for a long time, and it's about teaching the brain to do something different. So we are going to give the brain a reward every time it does something that we want it to do. There's a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens that it's how we learn everything in life. If this, then this. So we would put a threshold. Imagine a thermometer going up and down that represents the item that we want to change. And we want it to produce less of that. So we put a threshold on there, and every time the brain stays below that threshold, we're going to give it a reward. That can be, auditory, ding, 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 or it can be visual. So they can be watching a video, and if their brain wanders away from the task at hand, then the picture dims slightly. And then when they're doing it correctly, it stays strong. When you do that over and over and over, that's called operant conditioning. And what happens is new dendrites form and then new neural pathways develop. We now understand, up until about 1999, it was believed that once your brain reached full size, what you got is what you got. You learned about neuroplasticity, that everybody has neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to generate new neural pathways. So when we get rid of attention deficit disorder, for example, we tell the brain reduce the amount of theta and increase the amount of low beta or beta wherever we need to have that happen. And then by doing it over and over and over, new dendrites form, new neural pathways develop, and those are the ones that begin firing and the old ones stop firing. And the conditions that we would call ADD, anxiety, depression go away. permanently.
Wow. That sounds awesome. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it sounds like it almost sounds like, for lack of a better example, it's a mental workout versus a physical workout. With a physical workout, we can see the results externally. We understand, the our muscles, in our arms and legs and back, they get stronger with the resistance, but we got to do it consistently over time. Would you consider this to be, am I on the right track? Because it sounds similar to me.
Yeah, it's exactly the same way. In fact, like when you go to the gym and work a muscle, you want to give that muscle a break, don't you? So that you work on other body parts. Well, the brain's the same way. We need to give it a break so that the dendrites can form. So we usually only have people training, maybe 2 to 3 times a week. They don't train every day.
I see. Okay. And then when you said brain fitness, I got to be honest. The first thing that came to my head is I thought you were going to start talking about like nutrition in some way, shape, or form, but you didn't say that at all. And in fact, you used there was one word in there that you said hypercoherence. I was like, I don't know what that is. And you said, how good is your memory? I'm like, okay, is there something that I can do to improve that? Is that a different exercise? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting.
Nutrition is an important part of that because let's take where your brain has this hypercoherence that we talked about. Your brain is just all over the place. It is like if inside your head was a satellite TV system that had 50 stations. All of them would be turned on. The volume would be turned up very loud. And there's a little guy with a remote in there going click, 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 changing the channel. It would be a lot like as you're listening to me, if all you heard was every third word that I said. So your brain is jumping from thought to thought to thought and trying to put that together. That's hypercoherence. So by lessening that coherence, we want your brain to get from a less coherent state to a more coherent state where it's more efficient in the managing of that information. And part of that deals with the rhythm of the brain. So let's say that a normal rhythm goes lock, release, lock, release. But when you have hypercoherence, it's going to go lock, release, lock, release, lock, release, like that. So it's shortening up the rhythm, the time frame, and you're going to miss information. Another part that is very important is the cingulate gyrus. So the cingulate is responsible for passing information back and forth to the different hemispheres of the brain. So it can be underregulated or overregulated, and so you're not getting the rate of transfer from different sides of the brain to where it needs to be. So it's not very efficient, and we can improve that level of performance. Another element is the amygdala. The amygdala is kind of our fight or flight. It manages a lot of our emotional states or orders them, so it knows what do I need in this moment to survive. And so we would find, like with a lot of stock traders, because they would put themselves into situations where they've got to make the right choice, and they start to get worried about things, and their brain amps up, and they get to the point where time after time they've made bad trades. And so it ends up being almost like a form of post-traumatic stress disorder where that gets locked into the system. And so when they get in a trading situation, their amygdala is firing, and the front part of the brain called the neocortex should be putting the brakes on, and the brakes aren't coming on. And so, I'm going to show some pretty vivid examples of how people's brains change using this process we were just discussing, and they actually became better traders because of that.
Nice. Now, speaking of improvement, though, you also mentioned things about personal achievement because I've heard it said before. I may have even said in the past once or twice things like I can fear success. You can be afraid of achieving more, or you have this point where we have this roller coaster performance as entrepreneurs. Maybe you're writing an offer every day, and then for whatever reason, it gets to be uncomfortable because who knows what might happen. So you start backing off, even though you should keep writing the offers. How does this work in that world where what you want to do is you want to continue to build upon bigger and better things than you've ever possibly conceived before.
Yeah, Jay, that's an issue really of subconscious belief patterns, like we were talking before. What you think about and the context that you put it in. In being able to deal with some of those things more effectively, like high performance leadership. I was part of a research team at Arizona State University, and for about 4 years, we made a number of trips to the United States Military Academy at West Point. And we were looking at things like neuroscience and leadership. What is it that makes a leader good in a combat situation when it really matters? Or do they end up with deer in the headlights look? And so we were looking at the difference of new cadets versus seasoned officers, and what makes up complexity of thinking and all of those kinds of things. So we got a pretty good idea of the pattern in the brain. If you're going to be a good leader, we know that area needs to be developed. Just by developing that area won't make you a good leader, but you have to have the knowledge and the experience to go along with it. But once it's developed, you'll get there much faster. And the same thing is true for high performance. When we look at athletes, for example, and many people have heard this term, in the zone.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what is that? What is being in the zone?
I don't know, but it's fun.
Yeah. What it is there is a brain pattern that gets set up where we have a period of alpha waves and then beta waves and then alpha waves and then beta waves. So this rhythm gets set up. And so that's when the basketball player says, it was like the hoop was so large I couldn't miss. Or, the guy playing baseball, I could see the ball when it left the pitcher's hand and knew what kind of pitch was coming in. Being in the zone, and most of us have probably been there, and where time slows down, where everything seems to be clicking just right. So there is this alignment that takes place. And so can you train your brain to do that? Absolutely. All you have to do is go back to the last Olympics and look at, what were some of those people doing just before they made their run, and they would make this spectacular run. And you see them up there with their eyes closed, and they're doing what? They're visualizing what they're going to do. They're feeling the emotion. They're letting their brain get out of the way of their body to do what needs to be done. And so that's getting into the zone. Could you do that as a trader? Yeah, I've done it with lots of people, and they make really good trades, and they make really good decisions. They're able to control their emotions when they're in that situation and not let that amygdala fire and so forth. So there's a way of really dealing with that on a high end.
What's funny about you saying that is that I've often told people is that individuals who invest money with you, they're not investing money with you because of everything that goes well, as much as they are knowing that you have the resources and capacity to respond when things don't go well, and that you'll make the correct decision at that moment. And yeah. I find that to be very interesting compared to what you just said right there.
Well, anybody can steer the ship in calm water.
Exactly. How do you do it when it's not calm, the boat's leaking, and the weather forecast says more is coming and on the way?
Yeah.
Those are and what I guess the question comes to me is, why things like this seem like, to me, they're so helpful. We would be able to help many more entrepreneurs do many more things. Why is it that we have to wait until, in your opinion, we happen across a podcast or happen to be at the Money2 event to finally run into information like this that could actually benefit us in so many areas of our lives?
Comfort zone.
What do you mean?
Well, we get locked into our comfort zone. Most people don't like change. And, what I find is when people begin to understand the principles involved here, they get it. It's like, yeah, I need that information to change. And it's usually because they don't have the information. And that's where Thought Genius comes in. That's where we're taking the next generation of brain training to a higher level as we're getting ready to develop. And I'm going to show this device at the Money2 event, and it will work through your smartphone, off of your tablet or your computer, anywhere, anytime. And so you can get brain mapping information by selecting the side of the app that shows brain mapping, and it will shoot that information up to our servers, produce a report, send it back with all of the recommended protocols that you need for brain training. Then you can switch to the other side, to the brain training side of the app, and do the brain training with this device. It's low cost and it's highly effective.
The funny thing for me right now is that it is so hard going through all the series and interviewing the other speakers who are going to be there. I keep finding myself going, I just want to be a participant. And there's so much information I'm like, oh, this is great, this is awesome, because I know what the good we've been able to do with, we'll call it our handicaps at this moment. And if we get out of our own way, there's so much more that entrepreneurs can do. That's why this Money Squared event is becoming more and more, I get more and more excited every time, simply because I'm like, man, this is going to happen. And it's only, and then I start asking myself, it's only 3 days. It needs to be longer because there's so much information available. What would you say? Because I've heard this said, and maybe there's some truth to that, but I'm curious to hear what you would say since you've spent so much time with the brain. I've 2 questions. One, you heard people say, at least I've heard people say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm just wondering about the science behind it. And then secondly, because there's this group of people, I happen to be one of them, where things like when I sleep, I rarely, if ever, actually remember a dream in any way, shape, or form. It's like, I guess they happen. I have no idea. And I find both of those situations to be interesting to me. So I just figured, you're a brain guy. What say you?
Well, let's take the old dog new tricks thing. It goes back to what I mentioned a little bit ago. Up until 1999, we believed that once your brain is developed, that's what you got. And so I think that's where you can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of came from. But what we know as a fact, as a scientific fact, is that neuroplasticity is what allows the brain to change. The other part of that is you can change those subconscious belief patterns if you're open to making that happen. And so I think when you can't teach an old dog new tricks is because they are trying to do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. We all kind of know what that means. Then let's take the remembering your dreams kind of thing. Some people have very vivid dreams, where they're almost so real, it seems like reality to them. And then there are other people who do not remember their dreams. Does that mean that you're not dreaming? Well, not necessarily. When we get into the rapid eye movement part of our sleep, the REM sleep, we want to be deep into the REM sleep. There are 4 sleep cycles that we go through during the typical night. So in the 3rd and 4th cycles, we want to be down deep into that REM sleep, 18 to 30 minutes during those cycles. When people are not, I see a lot of this in the brain maps where they have a lot of frontal delta in 1, 2, and 3 hertz. And we call that low frequency, high arousal. Well, delta is the dominant brain pattern in our sleep. And when we see this frontal delta, it means that a person is not getting deep into their REM sleep. So they may have, tossing and turning, busy dreams, waking up 2, 3 in the morning, 4, 5 in the morning, depending on the sleep cycle they're in. So that's one element of not being able to remember any dreams, is not getting deep into REM sleep. Let's take the next condition where somebody who does get deep into their REM sleep, they sleep just fine. They just don't remember any of their dreams.
Right.
If you look at your learning modality, when we look at how do we learn things, it's through our senses. So some people are more visual, some people are more auditory, some people are more kinesthetic. I would be willing to bet, listening to the way you talk, that the predicates that you use, that you are a learn by doing kind of guy.
The learn by doing? Well,
Yeah.
I make sure I do. I do. It's funny. People are listening right now. I call the move at the speed of instruction. So I'm always talking about implementing, but I consume most information audio and I understand it best that way.
Okay. So your primary representation system is auditory. So why would you expect to be remembering your dreams if those are visual?
Wow. Never thought about it that way.
Of course not. So I think that kind of gets to the root of the question. What is your primary representation system and how well is your brain functioning on those things? That most people will lose the details of their dream within 7 to 12 seconds after they wake up.
Well, I don't even think it takes that long. Now, the last as we're getting close here, there was something that I saw on your website, and it was a quick little phrase, and I was just like, "That's a neat phrase, and I need to understand where it came from." It said, "You are not your brain."
Yeah.
What?
So when
That?
we talk about the mind,
Uh-huh.
and this debate has gone on for a long time. And is the mind outside of us or is it inside of us? Well, our brain, is, in my opinion, a transducer. So that information that is coming in from the field, we live in an energy field. The entire universe is an energy field. We are part of that energy field and it interacts with us. And this is one of the concepts that I'm going to show at the event is how our thoughts get into us and our thoughts get from us out into the field and how this interaction of energy takes place. And so you are not your brain, indicating that you are much more than that. That the energy that we live in is the bigger part of you. That we are only in this meat suit that allows us to have a certain amount of physical experience. Now, let me kind of clarify that just a little bit. What I mean by that is that uh, if you had a laptop and you took this laptop and there's a plug that goes from the computer to the wall, and with many laptops, there's a little box in between. And if you said, well, this box is really annoying, I'm going to cut this box out and wire it back together, then I don't have to deal with the box anymore, and you plug it into the wall, what's going to happen to the computer? It's going to fry it, isn't it?
Hmm.
Because it has to step down that voltage in order to function more effectively. Frequencies are the same way. The energy outside of us, so when people have higher levels of consciousness, for example, it is because their tuner is capable of picking that up, just like with a radio broadcast. So if you take a radio and you try to tune it in, and you get, you can sort of hear the program or the music, but there's a little bit of static and stuff. Well, that may be a function of brain health. Your brain is putting interference into there, and then you get it on the station. But let's say that most people with the frequencies that we measure, that human beings from 0 up to 60 hertz is typically the range of their receiver or their tuner. When people have what's called kundalini experiences, higher levels of energy, now their tuner can go up to 100 hertz or 200 hertz. And they are more receptive to that information from the field, being more intuitive, knowing things without really knowing how did they know them.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That
everybody has the capability of that. It's just how well is your tuner working?
I see, and this is exactly why all you guys and myself are going to be at the Money Squared event, because we can barely talk. We just don't even have enough time to go through it all. Let me ask you this final question. If someone was out there right now listening for the first time, they're trying to do their best to make this transition. Maybe they have the skill sets or the income of an employee, and they're working to become an investor. They're working to become a better business owner in any way, shape, or form. What something that you would be able to tell them that they could use right now today as a way to make that change?
Pay attention to your emotions, and then be aware of your thinking pattern. It's a little bit like training a dog. If your thoughts get off on a direction that you don't want them to go. When you train a dog, it's sit, stay, sit. No, I said sit. And your brain is the same way. Just call it back, say, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Don't go out there. Come back here. And so you learn the difference between wanted and unwanted thoughts because they're opposite ends of the same stick. So if you have unwanted thoughts and you recognize I have unwanted thoughts and I have negative emotions that are going on here, well, that's a very key ingredient because now you know what you don't want. And that lets you then turn and say, well, what is it I do want? And most of us, 75% of our thoughts are negative. Most people are going to focus on the unwanted thoughts. So they get the momentum going in that direction. But if you use that, because it's the yin and the yang that we need, the contrast is so vitally important. You have to know what you don't want so that you can focus on what you do want. And as you focus on what you do want, what's going to happen? That's what you're going to create in your reality.
Nice.
So it's about training the dog there.
Nice. Thank you again very much for taking the time to invest with us here. I can tell already that I know I'm going to have a great time at the Money2 event. I'm going to remember to go on stage when I'm supposed to get there and leave my notebook behind. But right now, that's quite all right. So this is very good. Thank you for taking your time to be here today.
Jay, thank you for having me as a guest. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it's time to do. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. It's time for you to go out there, figure out, hey, pay attention to your emotions today. Next time you write that offer, does this feel good? Next time you're thinking about writing that offer, is this moving me in the direction I want to go? The emotions are the signals. Is it a red light, yellow light, green light? Hopefully they're all green lights. Go write that next offer because that's where your cash flow lies. I look forward to talking to all of you guys again soon, and I will see you soon. Until next time.
Thank you for investing your time with Jay Massey and the Cash Flow Diary. When you have a moment, please visit iTunes and leave a positive comment about the show. And go now to our website, CashFlowDiary.com, to take advantage of our free business building course, Cash Flow Foundation. Gain the knowledge, understanding, and skill that will teach you how to never need a job again. Until next time.